Wellington Phoenix fans, Auckland FC fans, they didn't need your mindfulness because the football got them smiling. Big wins. Wellington Phoenix 2-1 over the Newcastle Jets. Auckland FC away to Central Coast Mariners. Big old 4-1 victory. And we swing back around. I think the Wellington Phoenix, they have a bye, and Auckland FC are playing Wednesday, 1st of January. They are at home, Mount Smart Stadium, against Melbourne Victory. Obviously, big wins, bounce-back wins for both teams that tell us. The White Ferns told us about their regular programming, their status quo. I still believe the Black Caps in Test cricket told us about their regular programming status quo. These teams inform us about what their regular levels are. And Auckland FC, Wellington Phoenix, they both informed us of their regular levels with nice victories. Not necessarily easy mahi victories. They still had to work hard. They still had a few mishaps, things going against them, but they got wins and they scored lots of goals. For me, the biggest storyline out of these games, Tim Paine, who Coach Chiefy said someone stood on the back of his ankle at training, which to me is like the worst thing about football. But that just sounds terrible because like someone's just chopping at your ankles with like some sort of studs on, and that just sounds absolutely diabolical. But then it was like, we were thinking it was fractured. So not only do you have any scratches, grazes, any scars, any like blood drawn from someone chopping at your ankle, but you might have a fractured ankle. And Tim Paine was ruled out. But you know what Tim Paine does? He makes bangers. He shows up. He performs. And that's what Tim Paine did for the Wellington Phoenix at right back. But then, not only is he actually playing, but I'm watching deep into that game for the Wellington Phoenix because they were only winning 2-1. Newcastle Jets made a nice little comeback. Who are the dudes who are playing with the most energy at the end of that game? One is Costa Barbarouses, who is the opposite of these young... Well, he was a young phenom, but now he's not a young phenom. Now he's just the best player in the A-League as a senior pro.
Luke Brooks-Smith wasn't even born when Costa Barbarouses made his Phoenix debut. And Costa Barbarouses was at that time the youngest ever Phoenix player.
So Costa Barbarouses is chasing blokes down 100% speed in the final minutes. Who else is doing that? Tim Paine, who was ruled out of the game 24 hours earlier. Big up Tim Paine for his toughness. Toughest football player from New Zealand. To be honest, with the Neil Wagner retirement, I'm going Tim Paine, toughest Kiwi athlete right now.
Well, I'm not going to argue that point. In fact, I think the Tim Paine Neil Wagner comparison is a pretty appropriate one, come to think of it. Not only for the like battling through foot issue, for commanding match-winning performance straight after. There's a direct one, but there's just, I think in general, those are two very hearty kind of carry the team on their back kind of players, just in how they always played regardless, and turning up each week with the same intensity and all that good stuff. It's that's the Tim Paine formula. And this, like, do you remember before the first Derby game when Alex Rufer was ruled out injured, and then he ended up playing anyway? And not only did he play, he started. Not only did he start, he played the entire game. And not only did he play the entire game, he was one of the best players on the park, even though the Phoenix did lose that game with just, this one of those very, very similarly courageous efforts to what we saw from Tim Paine there in that Newcastle Jets game, and very similar circumstances, and that he'd been ruled out and then he ended up playing and doing the full game and being awesome. And there's might be a pattern emerging here with the Phoenix medical staff, although to be fair to the Phoenix medical staff, they've been very busy this season, so an oversight here or there could be excused.
The T Pain one is, it just seems completely different to the Phoenix, to the Roofer one. The Roofer one seems like, yeah, I can see how that might have been derby gamesmanship, but Tim Paine in this game, first of all, it's not a derby, so the derby antics, there's no need for derby antics. But second of all, Chiefy after the game, he said the best thing about that game and the thing he loved the most was Tim Paine responding to his injury. And he talked about how bad it was when he was ruled out. So I think this is slightly different, but that's just me nitpicking your takes.
Well, it's a courageous effort either to say, but I think in both of those cases, there's no doubt they were injured, because Rufer got injured during the previous game, so we saw him get hurt. Like, we knew that was a real thing, and Paine, like you say, it was explained prior to the game what the extent of the knock was there, and what their sort of immediate fears might have been. As it happened, I think, I don't know, I think there's no two players in that Phoenix squad who you'd more anticipate being able to shrug off an injury through just sheer perseverance and determination and whatever than Tim Paine and Alex Rufer. That's why those are two of the leaders in the team. Is there a third? Who's the third one?
Come on now.
Well, I know it's not Micah Rojas because he's been injured all season.
No, but it's his little buddy up top. Costa Barbarouses is an absolute beast.
Yeah, okay. I mean, in a different manner, I couldn't see him doing what he does with like a hobbled ankle, because he relies a fair bit on his movement. But in a different way, I think, yeah, okay. Let's see. As far as the leadership crew goes, though, yeah, that's the big three.
That's the key point. Those dudes set the tone for the effort and desire to play for the Wellington Phoenix. All three are from Aotearoa. Rufer and Paine, I think, are from Auckland. Costa Barbarouses, local Wellingtonian.
Rufer from Palmerston North.
Ooh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
What do you know?
Same region then. It's good stuff. So there's only one Aucklander. Even better. But that is the, for lack of a better term, I'm going to chuck it up again, the holy trinity of Wellington Phoenix mana is evident in those players. You were Costa Barbarouses' biggest fan last season. Like, you've been his biggest fan for his whole career, to be honest. But last season, you're big up in Costa a lot. This season, the consistent effort and energy he plays with. How old is he now? He must be 35, 36, 34?
Yeah, 34th, turning 35, I think.
And he leads the Wellington Phoenix for fizz. He is right there with T Paine for energy. Those dudes last a long time in the games. And it's like this battle, Wellington Phoenix, I think they were the better team. They get 2-0 up, I believe. Then Newcastle Jets come back. Last 10 minutes, they get the shirts off, but it's that tricky spot where they get their shirts off, but there's only one goal in it. And you can kind of sense that the shirts might need to get back on at some point because the opposition's coming back in the game. But if I got Costa Barbarouses, Alex Rufer, and Tim Paine playing those last 15 minutes, including extra time, or whatever, I'm confident that the Wellington Phoenix are going to win, because those three dudes, they're playing with the same energy in the 92nd minute as they are in the second minute. And if you're looking for a development program, having the youngsters come up behind these three dudes is impeccable.
Yeah, and I think the most encouraging part of that victory against Newcastle was the way in which it resembled the types of wins they got a lot of last season, where, like, I think the Phoenix were the better team in this game, but they weren't the better team to the extent where it was a clear and easy kind of 3-0 victory or anything like that. It was, they had to hang on there at the end, and they had to hang on in a lot of games last season. I think 10 of their 15 wins last season came by a single goal margins. And you remember when they were first kind of establishing themselves as a team that was going to be up near the top of the table last season, when people thought perhaps it would be the opposite because of the amount of players that they've lost, which, by the way, is no different this season. It's like 5 of their starters from their elimination final 2 years ago left straight away, and 5 starters from the preliminary final second leg defeat to Melbourne victory last season have left. So they've kind of had the same hit to their starting lineup on both occasions. So perhaps maybe there's some of their I was going to say some of the wobbles this season, but really outside of the 3-game losing streak they've just had, their only other loss was to Auckland FC the first time they played. So it's not been, they've had a wobble recently, but it's not been an up and down season. They've been pretty good for most of the campaign. But yeah, perhaps that's something to keep in mind a little bit, as they are kind of rebuilding on the fly a bit in the way that they did last season, but they did last season with Finn Sermon ready to go and Alex Paulson ready to go and Ben Old ready to go. These guys who had already spent a couple of years around the first team picture getting ready, whereas like Matt Sheridan had a bit of last season. Nathan Walker, Luke Brooks-Smith have had no senior A-League football prior to this season. So some of those type of situations where, yeah, perhaps the youngsters coming through this year are a little fresher than the ones there were last year. But that's just how it goes. Some years you've got guys that have been waiting atop the queue, ready for their turn, and other years you just don't. You start again. So, but that's the thing to consider about how they've been a little bit wobbly, perhaps in recent weeks. Is they're rebuilding, and they've got a few new imports in there as well. And the more they play, the less wobbly they will get. So it makes sense that they weren't going to come in like all guns blazing to start the season, but they do still feel like a team that's going to continue to grow into things, and that's why this win was very encouraging, because it felt like it was a reclamation of their identity from last season, where they didn't create an abundance of chances, but they took two very well taken, in this case, two supremely well taken goals. Costa Barbarouses from almost halfway, and Paulo Retre with a banger in the bottom corner as well from some second phase stuff. So two, really well taken goals. So, which, they didn't create a whole lot outside of that. As if they had, they might have been able to run away with the game. They didn't, but they weren't that type of team last season either, and they were able to win these games because if you scored one or two, your defense is probably good enough to shut things out. And there were frisky moments in there when Newcastle pulled a goal back, but you also saw the Phoenix, like after they conceded, I don't think there was another like major clear chance. Just a couple good goalkeeping moments from Josh Oluwayemi in the later stages, but not really like saves that no one expected him to make. It was more like just being a good commanding keeper, good in the air and that kind of stuff, and making the saves that are expected of him. So good from him, but it felt like the type of win that this team was able to grind out a lot last season. And so to see them doing that now with a 50% rebuilt team, arguably more than 50%, it's pretty encouraging because there's some continuity right there. That's the Phoenix identity that served them so well last season. Getting to see a bit of reflection of that again here. Not, I won't say quite for the first time, but maybe for the most emphatic time this season, and at a moment where they really, really, really needed those 3 points because they just lost 3 games in a row.
I remember you talking about Lachlan Bayliss. Is he New Zealand adjacent?
He went to the Olympics with the New Zealand squad. He is, I think born and raised in Australia. And he was called up to an Olympic qualifying squad and then quickly withdrew, which made you think, well, maybe you're genuinely injured, or maybe you're just not quite sure which nation you're trying to represent. But he did go to the Olympics with the New Zealand team. He has had a pretty good season so far with the Newcastle Jets, scored a very good goal a couple of weeks ago. If it weren't for injury, he might have had more of a breakout season last year as well with the Jets. He sort of started the season, got some good minutes, good opportunities, playing quite well. Then he was injured for a lot of the middle of it, came back and did some nice things towards the end. But yeah, this season seems to be the one where he's been able to be a little bit more consistent about what he does. Attacking midfielder, definitely has a bit of a creative eye about him. I wouldn't say he's pushing all white selection or anything right now. I think we've got better players in those areas, but it's nice to have a little bit of depth. And yes, he is at least on the radar. Because remember, Darren Baisley coached that under-23s team at the Olympics as well. So he's worked specifically with a guy like Lachlan Bayliss. And we have seen since those Olympics, Liam Gillian was a part of that team as well, and he's since made an All Whites debut on the back of his form in the A-League, which, by the way, what are we, 9 games into the season now? Got his first assist on the weekend. So it's something I was mentioned. I've been tracking a little bit. I've been keeping an eye on this. Like, I love the Liam Gillian hype. I've been talking about him since his Auckland City days, about this as a guy who could play professional football. He's a guy who could represent his country. Very good, very talented player. But, like, that did come quite quick, the All Whites call-up. And it was a little bit of a, like, yeah, but just... there's a bit of end product that we're not seeing yet from him. We're seeing some sort of messy decisions, maybe with that last shot, that last cross, kind of that territory. And yeah, nice to see him get a little assist. I think it was for the Brimmer goal where he sort of recycled the ball, laid it back, and then Brimmer whipped it outside of the boot on the half volley bottom corner. Takes some of that. So yeah, good from Liam Gillian, and maybe Lachlan Bayliss will follow his pathway into the All Whites someday. Who knows? Apparently, they were saying on the commentary, the guy is it Gibson, who scored the goal for the Jets, also has a Kiwi mother, which is the first I've ever heard of that. But that would make him always eligible potentially. I think he scored 3 goals this season for Newcastle. So, I mean, you can never have too many options, right? The worst you can do is just not pick them. So it's good to have available players. I'm sure, I suspect in the A-League there's probably quite a few Australian players who are secretly eligible for New Zealand and we just don't know about.
I do agree with Gillian, because I don't think he'd work well with Chris Wood. Chris Wood, who scored another goal in the Premier League, so shout out to him. But I don't think he'd work well with Chris Wood right now because he's not whipping in the crosses.
No.
If Gillian gets the ball on the flanks out wide, he's not whipping in the cross, but he's gonna dribble. He's gonna create something. It's not just I don't think it's the most efficient thing that he's going to create. He's not going to whip in across to create a chance in front of goal. He might create another chance in a different way, but I'm like, that's a skill set, that's a experience that will come to him. But I don't think it really matters for Auckland FC right now because, I mean, Steve Corica knows the players. He coaches the team. He knows the skills involved, and I'm not convinced. Well, first of all, I find it insane that a lot of people just know better than the coach. Like, it's a very American thing where they just know the sport, the game better than the coach. And I think it would be rude for me and you and us here at the Nichecache to come on and just criticize coaching decisions all the time, as they do in a lot of other sporting discussions, because these guys are the coach. Their job is to coach the team. Part of coaching the team is being there at training and being there the whole time with the players, and also creating a game plan. So in this instance, the coach, Steve Corica, might be telling Gillian, mate, you don't need to cross.
Yeah, and we have no way of knowing that if he is. So there's no way we can sit here and criticize intentions that we didn't know, we didn't have any clue about.
And there's a lot of other good players like Guillermo Mai, very funky creator in the middle of the field. You got Brimmer, who's very creative in the middle of the field, scored a banger of a goal. You've got Moreno, who's very good at delivering crosses, creating from wide. Rogerson's more of a dribbler, but he can deliver the crosses. Like, it seems like Auckland FC have a style of football and a coaching structure and maybe instructions to the players where none of that Gillian stuff really matters, because he's still impacting games and they are still winning games without something that a basic perspective like mine might be looking at, oh, that might have been a good time to whip in across to Chris Wood, but you didn't, and the chance is gone now. Well, maybe I don't know anything, and maybe the players and the coaches know more than me, but I do want to just bring this up. A lot of cool names here in the Wellington Phoenix and Auckland FC team list. Let's go Oscar Takoda Van Hedem. We obviously know Marco Rodrigo Rojas Wellen. We got Konstantinos Barbarousis. We've got Alex Arthur Rufa. Fin Nahina Roaconchi. We got Timothy John Paine. That's a good one. But we've also got Nando Zen Peinecker.
Yes.
That would
and
only be better.
Something absolutely amazing? Guess what Joe Bell's middle name is, or one of Joe Bell's middle names?
Talofa.
Zen.
A couple of Zens.
There's two guys in the Always who have a middle name Zen.
The only thing better would have been Nandosh Zen Peinecker. Shout out to the Aotearoa Vitamin Party. Thomas Jefferson Smith, who played 90 minutes. I thought, like everyone was saying, Tommy Smith was too slow. He's too old to be playing for Auckland FC. I don't know if he played. That's not a fact. I don't know. I'm not a TVNZ cricket commentator speaking as if everything is a fact. I do not know that Tommy Smith played 90 minutes for Auckland FC. Maybe you can confirm or deny. He did. Well, that's Steve Corica. Had no issues chucking Tommy Smith in there. We got Cameron Drew Naru Howison. Drew Naru. That's a... We got Nader. Now, it's not spelt Stephen, but it Stiven. Nader Steven Moreno Betancourt. We got Logan Tipene Rogerson. These names, fantastic. But Auckland FC, they did have a big win. 4-1. A 4-win win over Central Coast Mariners. And I am consistently impressed with Zen Peinecker and Hiroki Sakai. Shout out to Smith. I thought Smith held it down. He played his role. Good passing, good positioning. That was solid from him. But without Dan Hall, Zen Peinecker's stepping up big time. I'm loving what he does. I think he's the boss of the team. And he lets, like, his presence on the field is felt in that regard. But then you've also got Sakai, and this is something I'm pondering with Auckland FC, because you compare it to Wellington Phoenix, direct comparison. Tim Paine, what does he do? Up and back, down the sideline. And he does it after being ruled out. But he just bursts up and down the sideline for 90 minutes. What does Sam Sutton do? Bursts up and down the left-hand sideline, up, back and forth. Francis de Vries and Hiroki Sakai, they aren't necessarily going all the way up and all the way back and doing it over and over again. They're not making those sprints. So it's a bit different. But Sakai and de Vries, now obviously Sakai does it like 9 out of 10 class. De Vries is a bit more 7.5 levels of class. But when the ball gets to Sakai, and he's playing it right back, maybe the right side defender in a back three, no matter what's happening, he's going to make a good pass. And I think it's something really important in football, because how many times, so we're playing out from the back, the ball eventually, like, often gets to the left back or the right back, and they are up against the sideline. They got a dude in front of them. They got all their passes that they can make. The only pass that isn't marked by an opposition player is going backwards. It's a really tough spot to be in on the left side of defense or the right side of defense, because all your passes are basically telegraphed. But Sakai always makes the right pass. De Vries usually makes the right pass. They aren't as fast, and they don't have quite the work rate of Tim Paine or Sam Sutton, but their positioning is always excellent, and their passing, their distribution is fantastic. And I think that is a key difference between the two teams. I was impressed with the Wellington Phoenix. Like, their midfield trio is catching my eye. Rufa, Paulo Retre, and Nagasawa. Is that the...
That's the one, Kazuki Nagasawa.
Nagasawa. Like, that midfield trio is pretty impressive for me. I think Auckland FC's got a similar midfield, similar attacking players to some extent. just with a bit more youth in the Phoenix lineup. But the main difference is how those two wide defenders play. Because Sakai, with his limited options, it's always a precise, accurate, powerful pass that flows into another attacking motion. I think De Vries is he's not in the same class as Hiroki Sakai, but he does similar stuff in terms of he's not bursting up and down the flank, but he's always there if he's needed. But his left foot passing game is precise and accurate and powerful.
And you know what else he does a lot of? He crosses the ball, which on that left-hand side means that Liam Gillian doesn't have to, because there's still crosses coming in from those areas. It's coming in from a little bit deeper from the fullback, who hits the ball very sweetly. So there you go. And therefore, Gillian's often tasked with being that guy to sort of carry the ball forward on the counter-attack and create things through those methods, which he's very good at. I was surprised, though, just getting back to his sort of like the end product stuff, that's maybe the icing on the cake that's been missing from what everyone can see is otherwise some very good performances from Liam Gillian, just settling straight into professional football like that. I guess maybe the Auckland City background, even though he was only there for a couple of years, but that's probably as close to getting you set for professional football as you can get domestically in this country, at least. Where last week when Nader Moreno comes into the starting lineup, Moreno goes on left wing and Gillian swaps to the right wing. I thought that was quite a smart idea. I would have liked to see that a fair bit more, where it means that Gillian as a right footer is on the right edge, where he's probably being drawn into more crossing situations rather than cutting in and shooting as he would do a bit more on the left, where his shooting, even though he's scored bundles of goals for Auckland City, so he's good enough to score from those situations, but he's also good enough to play on either flank. I wouldn't have minded to see him at the time where he's maybe struggling with the end product, to put him on the right where it's a little bit more singular focus on setting up, but they were terrible last week, so perhaps that was part of it. Was Corica, like we were saying before, about we don't know the instructions, we don't know what the coach is looking for, and therefore what he sees. Or there might well have been something in that where just the build-up wasn't there because, I don't know, want to protect that De Vries and Gillian link or on the left or something like that. But you think of how often Gillian carries the ball in transition, that's probably part of that. He's getting into those situations maybe largely thanks to the combination with De Vries, who knows how to get the ball to him. So whereas Sakai does play a little bit different. But yeah, I thought Sakai was spectacular in the Central Coast win. He's so good. It's like you're saying, he always makes the right pass, but he just always, that's within the wider scheme of he always just does the right thing, full stop. He's so he's just like a step above. His brain's working quicker than anyone else. He just reads the game so well. And I think if this game proved one thing above all else, it's that he needs to be the right back. He can't be playing at centre back, because there's a couple games he played at centre back, they weren't very good. They conceded a bunch of goals. Couple games he goes straight back to right back, and he scores himself within what ended up being a pretty dominant performance. They scored the early goal, they conceded immediately afterwards. You're thinking, oh, there's a little bit of this could be another bit of one of them mentality tests after they got found out pretty badly last week for just not turning up with the right attitude or whatever. Well, the attitude was there to see as they quickly responded, scored a couple more goals before halftime. Rogerson finishes one off at the bench at the back post, similar to his first goal actually for Auckland FC later on, to give them a more commanding win. Maybe a more commanding win than the flow of the game suggested, because I think Central Coast, especially in the second half, were quite well on top of that game, but Auckland FC defended very well. Like I was saying about the Phoenix, they didn't have Tommy Smith to bring on off the bench, but Tommy Smith was already out there, so that's fine. He did a good job. I think Tommy Smith was solid, but I think Sakai and Paine, were fantastic in that game, and some good stuff from Alex Paulson in there as well. And that's how you keep a team out like that and get yourself a goal against the run of play to seal the deal. And there you go, back to winning ways there for Auckland FC, who remain first. But yeah, they might need to sign another centre back in order to fill things out because they kind of don't have another option there. Like there wasn't a centre back on the bench to bring off with Tommy Smith starting. I think Smith did enough to suggest, well, you might as well just keep starting him. If they played well, they won pretty handily in this game, and Sakai was fantastic in his natural position of right back. No need to mess with that. I mean, there was a similar situation what you saw with the Phoenix actually, because I was wondering when I saw the team sheet and they picked two right backs with Sheridan and Paine both in there. I'm wondering, well, if Payne's been struggling with injury, maybe they won't ask him to do the up and down the sideline runs all day. Maybe they'll just put him at centre back and have Sheridan do that stuff. But that's not what happened. Sheridan played right centre back in the back four. Paine did all the stuff he normally does. And when you're seeing him doing all the stuff he normally does, you're thinking, well, yeah, of course. Like, why mess with the formula? He's one of your key players. If you think he's fit enough to start, you have to back that he's fit enough to make all those, to do 90 minutes of running. And he was, and he did. And Matt Sheridan actually played quite an excellent game, I thought, as a centre back in a back four. We've seen him as a centre back in a back three a few times, seen him as a right back, seen him as a right wing back, even seen him as a right midfielder on one occasion. And here's another little positional bingo. He's played every position on the right side now for the Phoenix already. He's actually, though, I think it sounds weird when you say that about a right back, but I think if people understand he was actually a midfielder for the reserve team, he's only really been a right back the last couple of years because he was a midfielder at a time when Dan Mackay was still there and Finn Conchi was one of the key players for the reserve. So it was like you can play off the bench as a midfielder or you can start games as a right back. So he started games as a right back, ended up getting a Phoenix contract, a scholarship contract on the back of that, which he's now turned into a full contract. And sweet as, he's apparently just Mr. Versatility. I don't actually think we'll see a lot of him at right back moving forward because Tim Paine, is not only locked onto that position now, but has signed a contract extension for the next several years, so he's not going anywhere. They also gave Schwan Loke, the current captain of the reserves team, he's got a scholarship contract now. So he's a fullback, predominantly a right back, but can play left back as well. So we've also seen, I think, Corbin Piper get a little bit of just a little bit of time at right back. I think he came off the bench and played right back in one game, but he's also played a lot of that right centre back duty as well. So
wasn't he playing on the left, like left midfield?
Yeah,
or something?
well, Corbin Piper's has got something in common with Matt Sheridan there because they subbed him on in place of Luke Brooks-Smith to play as a left winger, and I'm thinking, well, that'll be a positional change. Like maybe you're going to a four in the midfield. No, it wasn't. It was just a straight swap, and they just wanted a more defensive, rugged option there. And also, I think with Luke Brooks-Smith, it's like you can ask an injured Tim Paine to come in and play 90 minutes because Tim Paine knows exactly how to play 90 minutes. Luke Brooks-Smith doesn't have that conditioning at the A-League level, so you give him a half and then you protect him. Don't let him run out. Like, don't let him stay out there for so long that he's exhausted and becomes a bit of a hassle for the team to deal with. Like, get a good solid half out of him, sub him off. Corbin Piper does the rest. That's what happened. That's how it worked. So yeah, they're interesting little defensive shuffles for both of the Kiwi men's A-League teams there. But I think defensive shuffles that worked pretty well because they won both those games. And I don't think we should see Hiroki Sakai playing centre back again in any time soon. And if that is the case, perhaps they might need to find another defender. I did mention last week how they cut loose old Joey Champness, which suggests that perhaps they're clearing. I think it sounds like there was a bit of a falling out there, so it was a very much a mutual, we don't actually want you in our squad anymore. But that does clear a bit of room for them to potentially bring in another defender just for cover. So that's an option they might have, at least just to fill out some depth until Dan Hall comes back from injury. But that back four did pretty well in that game against Central Coast. Central Coast, they've had their own wobbles this season, similar to the Phoenix in that they were good, so therefore they sell some players, then they're good again, and therefore they sell some more players. You win back-to-back championships. There's plenty of players that are worth selling, and they're rebuilding a little bit like that, but they're still a dangerous team. And Auckland FC were, especially getting the job done nice and early. We talked about how often they score late goals. Here it was 3 goals in the first half to set up the victory. So yeah, a great response from them. Like a genuinely great response from what was a terrible performance last week to get an away win like that. Tricky conditions against a good team. There's plenty to like about that. Plenty to like about both of those victories.
It was the flip side of last weekend where the Wellington Phoenix women were the only team to get a win. This time they
Yeah.
were the only team to lose, so that was a bummer. They lost 2-1 in the Women's A-League. Is there anything there, or is there anything, because I think there's a steady flow of football in England over this period of time. What tickles your fancy from the world of football involving Aotearoa?
Well, the women's Phoenix loss 2-1 to Melbourne City, that does snap their 3-game winning streak, so that's a little bit annoying. But they were away against the best team in the competition so far, and they were leading 1-0 at halftime. There was a defensive error. The goalkeeper passed it straight to Grace Jale. Grace Jale wasn't able to score, but she got a powerful enough shot that it was parried to Olivia Ferguson, who tapped it home 1-0, sweet as. They spent most of the game defending, but they held on to that lead, especially in the second half when City brought on Mariana Speckmeyer, ex-Phoenix striker, among a couple others, as a bit of a... I think they made a triple change after 55 minutes to try get into it, and they really did take control after that and scored. There was an own goal to equalize. They were very quickly scored again to take the lead. It was around 65, 66 minutes that the 2 goals went in. So you're thinking then maybe they'll run away with it. Like, it's, to be fair, a better reflection of the game that Melbourne City are ahead at that point. But Emma Main comes off the bench for Wellington Phoenix, sparks a few things for them. They actually had quite a few chances. In fact, all their best chances came after they were 2-1 down. So considering that the goal they scored was a bit of a defensive giveaway. So there was some nice stuff in there. It's a frustrating defeat, but frustrating in a way where it felt like it's frustrating because not because they played badly. It was frustrating because they played quite well and might well have taken something from that game, might easily have gotten a 2-2 draw. So, and getting impact off the bench as well from someone like Emma Main is good stuff too. That's helpful. They've shuffled their starting lineup a lot, but part of the reason for that is because they've got a lot of players that are capable of being starters, which means you've got options on the bench each week, and that's working out fairly nicely for them. That was on display whenever Maine's coming in and sparking a few things, but it was just a little bit annoying that they lost that game, but they had been in good form, and this was a continuation of that good form because they don't normally do anything other than get thrashed by Melbourne City, so that was cool. Rebecca Stott, immense at the back for Melbourne City, and there made about 1 million passes throughout that game, just getting everything rolling for them. So yeah, it's a little bit pesky for the Phoenix women, but still the type of close defeat that suggests that this is like this. The cart's not being upturned or anything like that. They're just going to continue on the way they've been going, and hopefully they'll win the next one. What's going on in the wider world? Well, we mentioned Tyler Bindon a little bit. He's definitely on transfer watch when the new year kicks in. There's a couple of players that that could apply to, but I think he's front and center because that whatever transfer that goes down there might also be quite a significant one. I mean, this championship club's being linked with him at the moment. It's not out of the question he might even get a Premier League deal. I don't think he'd necessarily play. I think that might be the best case scenario for Reading, would be if he goes to a Premier League club and they loan him back to Reading for the rest of the season, would probably be their ideal situation that they'd like to work on. I don't necessarily think that'll happen quickly either. That might be a few weeks. And I talked about the bicycle kick maybe being the last thing he does for Reading, but if you've got a bunch of bidders, you want them to keep bidding. You want them to drive each other up, especially when the money is the whole purpose of the sale because your club is absolutely broke. Well, driving the biggest bargain you can makes sense. So that might take a few weeks to go down, if indeed it does. Who knows? Maybe they might decide he's too important and we'll sell him later. But we gotta hang on to this dude. But Chris Wood, Nottingham Forest, scored a goal this morning, got an assist as well. His first assist of the season. He's not really been it makes sense why he wouldn't be. Like, they've built a team around trying to get him goals, so of course he's not going to be out there setting up goals. He's supposed to be at the end of all the moves. There's nothing that happens after the end of the move other than walking back to halfway to let the other team kick off because he just scored. Nicely taken goal, a little bit of head tennis with, I think it might have been Anthony Alanga, and then just whips it over the top. But yeah, clever pass as well, feeding in field for Morgan Gibbs-White to get their second goal. They won 2-0 against Everton. Nottingham Forest have won 5 games in a row. The last couple of them didn't involve a lot of Chris Wood. It was sort of, 1-0, 2-0 wins where he was a little bit more on the periphery, but other guys stepped up to provide goals when they needed them. This one against Everton was a little bit more, this was Chris Wood's party. The goal and the assist and the 2-0 win, that's how it goes. Against his old mate, Sean Dyche, coaching for Everton as well. A couple of his ex-Burnley teammates around that Everton squad. I can't remember who played, but 5 wins in a row. This is mid-round. There'll be some more games tomorrow morning, but at the time of recording, Nottingham Forest is sitting second. They might drop back to fourth at the end if Arsenal win, if Chelsea win. Fine. Okay, Nottingham Forest are fourth in the New Year's then at the exact midway stage of the season, because I think they played 19 games, which, yeah, literally the exact midway point of the season. Nottingham Forest could, maybe even should make European football off the back of this. Nottingham Forest could qualify for the Champions League if they don't slow down. Like some of the, you sort of think a couple of the traditional top 6 teams, just Manchester United aren't doing very well. Spurs are up and down. Manchester City won this morning, but have been on a complete. Don't even know what's going on with them. There's some vulnerability there in those top 4 spots, and Nottingham Forest have been playing fantastic football. They're an extremely good defensive team. They're very well organized, very well coached. They know exactly how they want to play. They know how they want to break down teams. They're consistently able to break down teams because Chris Wood's now got 11 goals this season. And they're just playing fantastic footy. And we're halfway through a season at this point. At this point, you're actually allowed to start thinking about where teams are on the table and how they might finish up, because they've put themselves in a fantastic, just an amazing position. And if they can carry this on, I mean, Chris Wood in the Champions League, who knows? It's still not likely, but they've given themselves a chance.